Ghana, we now have freedom. Ghana, land of freedom. Toils of the brave and the sweat of their labors. Toils of the brave.
And so I got home in 1971 and I was teaching English as a second language, because English is the national language in Ghana. And it's everyone's second language. The Ghanaians have several languages. Their tribal language, probably 2 other tribal languages plus English. So I got home to the United States and didn't have a job, but I got one by October in a school teaching English. And the students, we lost touch. They graduated. We never had each other's addresses. They said they were too young to think about it. But I think I always knew that I would go back to Ghana. I always believed I would go back to Ghana. And I can't think that there were more than 2 or 3 days gone by that I didn't think about Ghana in all the intervening years, you know. It was such an overwhelming experience for me, and I loved every single moment of it except training. And decided that I would someday go back. And in 2011, 40 years later, I went back to Ghana. And it was the 50th anniversary of Peace Corps and the 50th anniversary of Peace Corps Ghana, because Ghana was the first country to receive Peace Corps in 1961. There was a big plug on the Return Peace Corps Volunteers from Ghana group that we should go back to help celebrate the 50th. And the newest trainees, they have 3 training programs in Ghana now for all different things. In the summer, the June to August training program is for teachers, the same as it was in my day. But now everyone, of course, trains in Ghana, and they have training sites. You know, they live with families. You know, the bones of my program are kind of still there, but they have a family now where they stay most of the training time, because they're all in the same place generally.
But to back up that story, man, it's kind of a big deal to go back after all those years. So tell me about how you decided to go back.
Well, all those years I had been saying I would go back, I would go back, I would go back. I mean, Ghana was, my house still has baskets, Bolgatanga baskets. Now you can buy them online, anywhere, eBay, whatever. But in those days, nobody ever heard. Now they're called Boga baskets. No one has any idea they come from Bolgatanga, Ghana. They're just Boga baskets. That's like Kleenex. You know, that nobody knows that Kleenex is really the name of the company, not the thing you use on your nose.
Before you leave, and so I don't forget now, I will forget, I'm going to Google that Boga, and then you show me what you're talking about.
Okay, the Boga baskets. So I brought back Boga baskets. I brought back, my town was famous for the baskets. I mean, and it had leather, good black. The leather was black and red was the 2 colors. And I had a passport case made in the market, and I had to bring a piece of paper in to show the man how to make folds, so he could make a fold. And I still use the same passport case now. It's been all over the world with me, and it went back with me to Ghana. But anyway, people were talking about the 50th anniversary of Peace Corps Ghana was 2011, the same as Peace Corps, and that the newest volunteers would be sworn in the exact same day 50 years earlier. The first volunteers in the history of Peace Corps were sworn in. And so there was a big push. We all should go back. We all should, as many as possible should go back. And I'd been saying I would go back. So I said, all right, I'm going back. I had really bad back, so I went back first class. I treated myself really well. I went back United, I had my own little sleeping pod. And I get off the plane, and they still don't have jetways, and I was hit by this blast of heat. It was like, okay, I'm home. I could smell Ghana. You know, I can't describe the smell. You have to have lived in Ghana to know what Ghana smells like. You know, it smells like all the ferns, the wetness. It smells like the sewers. It smells so many things. And it was like, oh my God, I'm back in Ghana. And I had made a reservation at a place recommended by a volunteer who goes back every 2 years. She works for a company that pays to go teach. So she told me where to stay, and they met me at the airport, and I stayed there for a few days. And then I stayed there like close to a week because, you know, I went around, got a phone, got a SIM card so I could call home, because I was traveling by myself. And when I travel by myself, my family expects me, you know, to fall, break a leg or what. I went to Morocco for 2 weeks by myself. They were horrified. So I got a phone so I could call them. And in Ghana, it's easy to call because you by minutes. It doesn't cost. So I could talk to them for the same cost to talk to a student. But anyway, I would go to Boga for my second week. And I knew that I would find my students. I knew it because I had Frafra students. And the only place that you found the Frafra tribe is in Bolgatanga, or the small villages around Boga. It's the only place they exist. So I knew that some of my students would be in that area. So I had a plan that I would go, and I was staying at a hotel that is so Ghanaian, it's unbelievable. It had air conditioning but no hot water. They had to bring me a bucket every night so I could take a hot water bucket bath. It was like being back in Ghana. We stopped. Rented a car and a driver for $1,500 it cost to go up country, because they say to go up north the roads are so bad. And for 1 week it was $1,500 for the car and driver, but I didn't have to pay anything but gas. He was all paid for. He paid for his own food, lodging, everything, but $1,500. But he was great. I really liked him. His name was Thomas, and he had never been in northern Ghana before. He was astonished. Where are the trees? You know, where's the grass? Where's this and that? So we stopped for lunch, and I had my first fufu in a long time. And the soup was so hot, because Ghanaians use a lot of hot pepper. I think it burnt my fingers, but I had fufu. So we got to Bolga, and I was staying at of all places, a place called Kumsi Kumsa. What a place with a name like that is doing in Bolga, I still don't know. But I got a room that was air conditioned, and it had, as I said, a hot water bath. And it had a restaurant outside. And according to, I had the Brandt Guide to Ghana, which in my research said was the best one to bring. So I brought that. And it said that the restaurant was a good restaurant. And it had both European and Ghanaian food. So that first night, I walked in the restaurant, and as I walked in, on the left-hand side was a table with two Ghanaian men and two Ghanaian women. And I said, Sandiini. And Sandiini means good evening in Hausa. And they all said, Sanuka Day. So I went and I sat on the table near them, and I heard them, and they were speaking Frafra. And then one of them said, teacher in English. So I decided I would be brazen, and I just leaned over and I said, sorry, but I am looking for students. You know, you learn to speak slowly to Ghanaians. You know, if you and I were together with a Ghanaian, I would talk to you this way, and I would turn to the Ghanaian and say, and you said what? You know, you just had this way of, so I said, sorry, I am looking for students. I had a plan. Before that, I'll tell you. My plan was the next morning, I would go to the local government school office, and I would ask them to help me find my students. And had I done that, I would have found one working there, Francisca Terry. And so anyway, this night I'm sitting there and I say, I am looking for students who went to Women's Training College. I was a teacher there. And the younger woman points at the older woman, and she looks at me. She yells my name and comes over and gives me a hug 40 years later. And she wasn't even one of my students. She was just a year ahead of my students. I never taught her. Her name was Shaitu Mahama. She says, Miss Ryan, and ran over and gave me a hug. I didn't even have to introduce myself. I just said I was a teacher, and she knew exactly who I was. 40 years later, it was like, oh my God. And she's saying, oh, we wondered who the white woman was who was speaking Hausa. And that was me walking in. So they don't use talking drums anymore. They use cell phones. So within 2 days, I saw 6 more of my students who came to the hotel to visit me. And we'd go shopping in the market together and spend an evening together. And then on my last night in Bolga, they had a big dinner for me, and they gave me a dress they had a seamstress make for me. And there were 7 students and me, and 2 of my favorite students were missing. One is Francisca Isaka. And they said, oh, she's in the United States. So they call her on the phone. And they say, Francisca, guess who we're having dinner with? And she said, I could hear her. I don't know. They said, Miss Ryan, I could hear her scream. So they gave the phone to me, and she lives in Ohio. And she says, I've looked for you all over the United States. I've tried to find you. I've called Peace Corps. I said, no, Peace Corps wouldn't know where I am now. I said, you would have had to go to Return Peace Corps, which she wouldn't have known. So she was unbelievable. And the other student that I really loved was Grace O.Y., and she lived in Accra, and they didn't have her number. So that night, we all hugged. They gave me their phone numbers. They gave me their home addresses, their emails and stuff. So before they left, Rosa Tia, another of my favorite students, said, oh, wait, we have to sing Miss Ryan's song. So I'm baffled. I have no idea what they're talking about. So Rose says, oh, when we get together for weddings and baptisms and funerals, we always sing Miss Ryan's song. So I said, well, okay. So what do they start singing? Leaving on a Jet Plane. Perfectly. And all of the verses. They had learned it from my Peter, Paul, and Mary tape that I had my cassette tape that I had with me. And I just was beyond, it was like, oh my God. So I hugged and we left, and for the next year I would write letters, send Christmas cards, and call periodically. And I decided I had enough money. I went back the next summer, 2012. I went back for 3 weeks, and I stayed in Bolga all 3 weeks. And Grace O.Y. had gone to Bolga in like March or April, and one of the students, B, told her, oh, guess who you missed, Miss Ryan? Well, she was horrified. She got my number, she called me. So she met me at the airport on my second trip. And Francisca had a car that she had left in Ghana, and they sent a driver down from Bolga, and we had to get new tires for the car, but we used Francisca's car, and I stayed in her house, which she hasn't lived in. She hasn't been back for years. Stayed in her house in the village of Kantia, and I was there for 3 weeks. And I took B, who was Francisca's sister, and Grace with me everywhere we went. We went and we did sightseeing. And B had never, I mean, Grace had never seen, we went to the butterfly sanctuary. We went to the Cantampo Falls. She had never been to any of these places. Pick slave camp. It was like they're going, we did not know these were here. So they were amazed that I did that. And I had a second book with me that summer, and it was a book about Ghana that had been written by former Peace Corps volunteers. So I had an absolutely wonderful time. You know, I was with students every single day. I ate all my favorite foods. Kelly Welly plantain that has ginger in it and hot pepper and sometimes peanuts or ground nuts, as they say in Ghana. I had guinea fowl. I adore guinea fowl. Jollof rice. It was just, I just had the best time those 3 weeks. And I still am in contact. I couldn't go this summer. I couldn't afford it. So Grace has everything ready. She's been told by me 100 times to be assertive when she goes to the embassy. So she's hoping to get an appointment in the next week or two so that she can come and visit me.
This next year?
No, within the next month or two. Because if she gets a visa, she already has a passport. If she gets a visa, she's going to book the flight and come and visit me. And she'll go from Accra to New York to Boston, and then I'll pick her up at Logan. So she is so excited about the thought of coming to visit. And I am too, because I really adore Grace. So that's what's in the offing now, is I couldn't go this summer. I'm really jealous of my friends Bill and Peg who are there now. And however, I have Grace's visit to look forward to. And I talk to Grace a lot. Francisca calls me from Cincinnati all the time. I call Rose periodically. Agatha calls me. So in the 2 years since my return, I'm in contact still with all of my students. You know, so it's just been unbelievable back in contact with them. Most of them are retired. They're in their early 60s. And it's just amazing. You know, so the whole adventure, the whole experience continues.
Freedom, Ghana, land of freedom, toils of the brave.